Hi, welcome to my hot take on the new Longines Pilot Majetek. I hope I've said that close to right. Couple of things. One, this is a hot take. This is not a critique or a review. I haven't had the watch in my hot little hand. I haven't seen it with my own eyes. What you see on videos and renders and even the best quality images can often be deceptive. So yeah, as I said, I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't take anything I'm about to say as a critique of the watch. Two, when I'm doing a hot take, I'm really looking at, this is my reaction to the watch against what I think Longines trying to achieve and an assessment of what this watch means both for Longines and the broader market. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the watch and its inner workings or its history or something. If you want some of that stuff, go Google it first. Go check out an article, say over at Monochrome. They've done a really good article on this watch. Read that, then come back to me. And then I'm going to give you in my hot take an opinion of what do I think Longines trying to achieve with this? What do I think the brand is trying to achieve? Do I think they've been successful? Do I think there's other issues about this watch? And at the very end, I'll give you my opinion on whether I like what they've done or not. Okay, so if you're interested in that, if you need to go do some research, go do that, then come back. If you just want to watch my video up front, see you after the intro. Hi, I'm Pete McConville. Welcome to my channel. And as I said in my extended introduction, this is my hot take on the new Longines Pilot Majetek. Let's get into it with a description of the watch. What we're talking about here is a homage to a 1935 pilot's watch designed for pilots, I believe, of the Czech Air Force, but I think there was also some commercial releases. It's 43mm case, 13.25 millimeters thick, cushion case made from steel, comes on a leather or a NATO, comes with an automatic movement out of the Swatch group. It's their fairly standard fare, solid upgrade based around the familiar 2892 architecture. This one will give you 72 hours of power reserve. It's making some claims of anti-magnetism. It is chronometer certified. A key thing to bear in mind, this watch has an MSRP of 5,775 Australian dollars. Do your conversions and pluses and minus taxes in your own countries. Okay, so what's this watch trying to achieve? I think this is a watch designed to appeal to the classicists out there. Those people who want their watch designs to be based in a bit of history, perhaps be based, or probably certainly be based on some kind of prior reference for them to have the stamp of approval before they move on. It's a watch which is intended to be a little bit different, but not threatening or intimidating. You don't have to make any difficult choices to decide you like this watch. But there's enough in there that it doesn't look like every other historical piece you've seen. I also think this watch is designed to sort of fit in with a current trend for the dressier tool watch. I think the zeitgeist at the moment is moving away from the hardcore diver field watch, pilot's watch, and much more into these sort of hybrid of a genre watch, but with a bit more dress power behind it. And I think this watch is trying to achieve that. So I suppose the question is, does the Longines Pilot Majetek achieve those aims for the watch? And overall, I think it does. The bones of this watch are fundamentally very traditional, as you'd expect for a watch based on a real reference from back in 1935. The case shape, the finishing, the hands, the dial layout, the numerals are all very traditional. There's nothing there that's going to startle, surprise, or make anyone kind of think too hard about whether this is a good looking watch or not. The bezel and the pip action, so that you've got a rotating bezel attached to a pip inside the crystal that moves with the bezel, is unusual. It's both an unusual function and it gives the bezel a particularly unusual look in this more 30s styled classical watch. But I don't think it's overwhelming. I think most people are going to see that big chunky bezel Just like the dreaded expression, the pop of color, a bit of spice in an otherwise very conventional dish. I don't think it's going to put too many people off. With the original watch, that pip and the bezel and the crystal were all physically attached. As you turn the bezel, you turn the crystal, and you turn the timing pip. Here, Longines have broken that connection, and now the bezel and the pip move, but the crystal stays the same through the use of some sort of clever gearing system. Very smart move for 2023. I think that's a very clever upgrade, and I think it's going to really help this watch achieve what it's trying to achieve. I think some people are going to cry foul over the use of FOTINA. I have noticed that though the people that get really anxious about FOTINA, either they're becoming less or they're not talking up as much. I think the market has got more used to it. And so I don't think that's going to pose a problem for most people. This watch is going to be fine. Okay, so that's what Longines trying to achieve with this watch for this watch. But what's Longines trying to do with this watch for the entire brand? I think what they're trying to do there is really two things. One, this is a watch like many of their historic re-editions that's designed to reinforce Longines', I'm going to say, uniquely deep history and catalogue. The second thing that I believe this watch is trying to achieve is it's trying to get us used to the idea that Longines is a more expensive brand selling more expensive watches than we might have otherwise thought. This watch is fundamentally a fairly basic three-hander, and it's 5,775 Australian dollars, brand new from the shop. That makes it more expensive than the special 5 Hertz movement Ultra Chron. That makes this watch 2,500 Australian dollars more expensive than your basic three-hander Spirit, or $1,500 more expensive even than the Spirit chronograph. This is a watch clearly designed to get us used to the idea that Longines in Australian dollars can be selling three-handers for $5,000 and above. Okay, so now let's ask ourselves, does this watch, the Pilot Majetek, achieve what Longines is trying to achieve for its brand? In the first instance, absolutely it does. By reaching back to 1935, grabbing a historic reference, bringing it forward and saying, this is what we can do, it clearly establishes that Longines has a specific history, that it has a place in the history of wristwatches. But I think it does more than that. There's a lot of brands who can go back to the 40s and 50s. But what Longines has done here that's really clever is they've shot past that. They've gone back to the 30s, a place where not a lot of brands can stake out a really individual place, and said, here is what we can do. We can give you really unique designs that belong to us, that were used doing real things before World War II. In doing so, this watch invites discussion of Longines' history. Look at any article, any review of this watch, and it always begins with a line about, how Longines is one of the longest running, still established brands, how far back they go, how unique their designs were, how unique they are as a brand. So the watch is clearly achieving that aim. Okay, so on the second aim of this watch convincing us that Longines is a maker of watches that, its three-handers can cost $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, I'm less sure of its success. My first concern is around the movement. The kind of people that this watch is aimed at, your classical, traditional, conservative, little bit watch geeky kind of folk, tend to be more interested in movements, tend to be a little bit more educated about movements, and they're going to know that for all of our discussion about this being a Longines unique manufacture, that at its core, it was once an ETA 2894 that's received some nice upgrades. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think for the market that this watch is moving into, it struggles to separate. That movement doesn't really separate itself from the Mido Satina pack that lives just behind Longines and may may not support that move up market that Longines, I think, wants this watch to make. My second concern with this watch is more general and generic, and I cannot be certain that this is even a problem. But what I have found is that over my time in watches, Longines tends to be, I'm going to say, an anti-Seiko. What I mean by that is Seikos always look better in the metal. They always feel better in the hand than the images and the renders that Seiko gives you. Longines, I have always found, is the other way around. That the best view you ever get of a Longines is in the pictures they give you. That as soon as it hits your hand, it feels a little underwhelming. And my concern would be that while this watch looks fine and could look perfectly like a $5,775 watch in renders and in pictures, in the hand, it might not carry that through. As I said, I can't be definitive on that. It just feels that way. That is a historic feeling I've had with Longines. And I continue to worry that this watch in the metal won't support Longines' aim for moving themselves up market. I just want to touch on now a little side note that sort of occurred to me as I was sort of thinking about this video, but also listening to another podcast. And I had this question in my mind of, if Longines hadn't created this unique watch, not like anything else that it had back in 1935, then this watch in front of us right now, an interesting addition to the watch community, wouldn't exist. And the reason why that was interesting to me is yesterday I was listening to a podcast where people were decrying brands like Omega, Grand Seiko, Tag, introducing new watches, not sticking to their core collection and simply reiterating those over and over and over again, like Rolex does and has been very successful for Rolex. And they were advocating that that's what these brands should do. They should be more like Rolex. And the thought occurred to me that that might be true now, and that could be true as of 2023. But when I was thinking about this watch that was unique and may well have had people back in 1935 saying, why did you create this thing that's unlike anything else? They couldn't have known that, 70 years later, 80 years later, someone's going to recreate that and put it forward. And I wonder if a lot of these watches that Tag and Omega and Breitling and all these other things, which today get accused of being random, being scattershot, being thrown at the wall to see what sticks, might actually be really powerful foundations for those brands 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years from now, as the 1990 Aqua Racer or the 1980s Chronomat or the Bond Seamaster can be recreated and can be reissued and can be built upon. And maybe we should be these unique little pieces that come out of sort of left field from history are assigned to us, that maybe we shouldn't be so quick to tell people just focus on your core and iterate that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up with my thoughts on this watch, my personal thoughts on this watch, not how it's going to go in the market or anything. Personally, I kind of like it, but I don't love it. Overall, it's solid. There's nothing too drastically wrong, nothing that makes me shake my fist or, sort of gag on my breakfast cereal as I'm looking at pictures. But on the other hand, particularly as I looked at the older original version, I began to feel that it just didn't quite work. That's not to say I love the original version. I think that as I said earlier, that moving crystal would simply not work in 2023. And I personally hate cathedral hands, so I'm glad to see the back of those. For me, the gearing system and the cleverness that they've put in place to get around that moving crystal has made the bezel just too big, too hefty. There's too much visual weight, and as a result, it feels kind of ponderous and clunky, and it just has the look more that I'd expect of a diver than of this kind of dress tool pilot watch thing. It just doesn't feel right. So whilst I said earlier, I don't think it'll be bad in the market, for me, I don't really like the bezel treatment. And second, I need to be really clear on this. I have no problems with the idea of FOTINA, the idea of, I don't believe all loom should be stark white. I think if a creamy loom looks best on a watch, then great, go for that. If the natural aging of a previous reference has shown you that a watch gets better looking as it ages, fine, grab that better looking watch. The problem is here, I don't think the creamy loom is a better looking watch than the original. I think these Pilot's watches actually do best, particularly when they're against like these stark black dials. They do best with crisp white stark loom. If you look at things like the IWC Mark series, they look fantastic. If you look at the original version of this watch, it looks stunning with that stark white loom. My problem here isn't the use of FOTINA, it's that the creamy loom just doesn't work particularly well. I think it would have been better if it was just white. Okay, so what about you? Do you think this watch is successful in what it's trying to achieve? Do you like it? Is there anything else you would like to say about this watch? Leave it in a comment below. I've been Pete McConville. This is what I do. Overthink, overanalyze, get way too nerdy on watches. If that sounds like something you want to see more of, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That'd be ideal. And we will see each other again shortly. Bye.